two of history's most legendary warriors from opposite ends of the world. If they were to meet on the battlefield, who would actually win? It's as a clash of titans that has sparked endless debate. The ferocious Viking berserker versus the disciplined samurai master. One, a seafaring raider from the frozen north. The other, a noble warrior from the land of the rising sun. Today, we're diving deep into this epic matchup to finally settle the score. Let's start by getting to know our contenders. The Vikings were more than just horned helmet-wearing barbarians, by the way. They didn't have horns on their helmets. Emerging from Scandinavia around the late 8th century, they were skilled sailors, explorers, and merchants. But they are best known as raiders. Driven by a desire for wealth, land, and glory, their long ships brought terror to the coasts of Europe. Their society was built around a warrior ethos, and their Norse beliefs promised a place in Valhalla for those who died bravely in battle. They were tough, resourceful, and utterly fearless, molded by the harsh northern climates and a life of constant conflict. On the other side of the globe, we have the samurai, the elite warrior class of feudal Japan. For nearly 1,000 years, they were the military nobility bound by a strict code of conduct known as bushido, the way of the warrior. This code emphasized virtues like loyalty, courage, and honor above all else. A samurai's life was one of unwavering discipline, influenced by Zen Buddhism, which taught them to find calm and focus in the heat of battle. They were not just soldiers. They were artists, poets, and scholars who saw combat as a spiritual and philosophical pursuit. To face a samurai was to face an opponent with a lifetime of dedicated training and an unshakable will. Now, let's look at their tools of the trade. The Viking arsenal was practical and brutal. Their most iconic weapon wasn't the sword, but the axe. A Viking axe was incredibly versatile. It could be used to build a ship, chop wood, and then split a shield or a skull on the battlefield. It could be thrown or hooked over an enemy's shield to pull it down. For those who could afford it, the Ulfberth sword was a symbol of high status. These were marvels of their time, made from high-carbon steel that was strong, sharp, and flexible. And no Viking would go into battle without his round shield. Made of wood and reinforced with a metal boss, it was used not just for defense, but as an offensive weapon to punch and unbalance opponents. The samurai's weaponry, in contrast, was a work of art. The katana is perhaps the most famous sword in history, renowned for its incredible sharpness and deadly cutting power. Forged through a complex process of folding steel thousands of times, it could slice through targets with terrifying ease. But the samurai was more than just a swordsman. They were also expert archers, using the long yumi bow to rain arrows on their enemies from horseback. For close-quarters combat against cavalry or multiple opponents, they wielded the naginata, a long polearm with a curved blade, which gave them superior reach and leverage. Each weapon was an extension of the warrior, mastered through years of relentless practice. When it comes to protection, we see another stark contrast. Viking armor was designed for mobility. The typical warrior wore a simple iron helmet and a thick leather or woolen tunic. Wealthier Vikings might have had a byrnie, a long shirt of chainmail. This offered decent protection against cuts, but not so much against a powerful thrust or a heavy blow. Their wooden shields were their primary defense, forcing them to be agile and actively parry attacks. They valued speed and the ability to move quickly during chaotic raids over heavy protection. The samurai, however, went into battle wearing a fortress. Their traditional armor, the oyoroi, was a complex suit made of small iron or leather plates, called lamellar, laced together with silk cords. This design offered incredible protection, deflecting arrows and sword strikes effectively. The intricate helmet, or kabuto, often featured a menacing mask designed to intimidate foes. While this armor provided superior defense compared to the Vikings' chainmail, it was also heavier and could restrict movement, especially if the samurai was unhorsed and fighting on foot. It was a trade-off, unparalleled protection at the cost of some agility. So, how did they fight? The Viking combat style was ferocious and opportunistic. They famously used the shield wall, an interlocking line of shields that created a formidable barrier against cavalry charges and infantry assaults. Behind this wall, they would jab with spears and axes. In smaller skirmishes, their fighting style was raw and aggressive. They used their strength and unpredictable movements to overwhelm opponents. A Viking berserker, said to enter a trance-like fury, was one of the most terrifying sights on any battlefield. Their approach was pragmatic: win by any means necessary. Samurai martial arts, on the other hand, were a science of precision and discipline. From a young age, a samurai would train in various schools of combat, or ryu. They mastered kenjutsu, the art of the sword, focusing on perfect form, timing, and lethal strikes. They trained to anticipate an opponent's moves and end a duel with a single decisive blow. The bushido code governed their every action. A fight was not just a physical contest, but a test of spirit. Honor demanded they face their enemy directly, often in formal duels where technique and mental fortitude were paramount. Let's imagine some scenarios. In a one-on-one duel, the samurai's refined skill gives him an edge. His mastery of the katana, his speed, and his disciplined footwork are designed for this exact situation. The Vikings' raw power and unpredictable axe swings would be a major threat, but the samurai is trained to exploit the smallest opening. He would likely parry the Vikings' heavy attack and counter with a swift, fatal strike. Now let's put them on an open battlefield. Here, things get more interesting. The Viking shield wall is an incredibly effective defensive formation, almost impenetrable to a frontal assault. The samurai army, while highly organized with cavalry and archers, might struggle to break it. However, the samurai's strategic discipline and use of archers to soften up the Viking line before a coordinated charge could eventually find a weak point and shatter the formation. What about an ambush in a forest? This is where the Vikings' raiding mentality shines. They are masters of guerrilla warfare and using the terrain to their advantage. Their lighter armor would allow them to move more silently and quickly through the trees. The samurai, burdened by heavier armor and accustomed to more structured combat, might be at a disadvantage in a chaotic, hit-and-run fight where discipline is less important than raw survival instinct. Finally, naval combat. This is the Vikings' home turf, no contest. Their longships were fast, agile, and could navigate shallow rivers, allowing for surprise attacks deep inland. The samurai, primarily a land-based military force, had limited naval experience compared to the seafaring Norsemen. A Viking raid on a coastal Japanese village would likely be devastating and almost impossible for the samurai to intercept at sea. So let's tally the strengths and weaknesses. The Vikings' advantages are their immense physical strength, their adaptability to chaotic situations, and their unmatched skill in raiding and naval warfare. Their weakness lies in their lighter armor and less disciplined, more brutish fighting style when compared to the samurai. The samurai's strengths are their superior armor, unmatched discipline, and mastery of the duel. Their weaknesses are their relative lack of mobility in their heavy armor and their potential vulnerability in unconventional, guerrilla-style combat. So, who wins? The truth is, it entirely depends on the where and the how. In a formal duel, our money is on the samurai. His lifetime of training for that single, perfect strike would likely overcome the Vikings' brute force. But in a chaotic raid, a surprise ambush, or a battle at sea, the Vikings' ferocity and adaptability would probably carry the day. There is no single winner because each warrior was perfectly adapted to their own unique world of conflict. In the end, it's not the weapon but the warrior that truly matters. Both the Viking and the samurai represent the absolute pinnacle of the warrior spirit from their respective cultures. But what do you think? Who would win in your opinion and why? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic historical showdowns.